Welcome to the Carry the Speaker meeting. Our speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We ask out of respect for our speaker to please remain seated until he has finished. It is my pleasure to introduce Gustavo.
I'm Gustavo. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 23rd, 2011. And first of all, I want to start by saying how grateful I am to Alcoholics Anonymous and tell you guys that I have a lot of respect for the traditions, the steps of this program, but unfortunately my story has drugs in it, and I apologize if you guys are purists or something. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings yet. Not in the beginning, at least. And is it hot in here, or is it just me? Dude, I'm sweating harder than Mike Tyson in the spelling bee up here. So anyhow, I started by saying I was an alcoholic, and that's actually not how I felt when I first got here. I got here because I wanted my wife back. I wanted the kids back. I wanted the life that I had before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hear in a lot of stories that, in Alcoholics Anonymous, I got the life I always wanted. Well, before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had the life I always wanted. I just never knew how to appreciate it. I didn't know how to live it. I didn't know how to accept it. And I always felt like I should sabotage it one way or another because I didn't deserve it. And 99.9% of my time before I came here, I felt like I didn't deserve anything. So any good thing I got, I would sabotage, and it would start with alcohol, and then would end up with drugs, and then it would end up in the street. And I battled my disease for 16 years before I came in here. And I came in here at 30 years old. And when I came in here, I didn't know how to read. I had a very hard time reading English. And I remember one of the first encounters I had in AA. I did not know what AA was to begin with. I never knew what it was. I went to treatment for 30 days. And they went to meetings. They went out to speaker meetings and stuff, and I did not go. I heard chips. They give chips out. I'm Mexican, so for me, chips, I thought chips, salsa. I said, okay, it's kind of like a family thing, so it's going to, no, and I seriously thought that. So a lot of my story, there's a lot of stuff that I kind of, because of the second language barrier, I thought that it was one thing when it was another. And that was the first one. When I came to meetings, I was looking for the chips, and I never saw no chips, and they started by lying already. They tell you one thing, they get here, and then there's no chips. So anyhow, when I was a kid, I was born in Mexico, and since the get-go, and this is the story that my grandma used to tell me when I was younger and before she passed. She said that when my mom was giving birth, my dad used to beat on my mom a lot. And he used to beat on her when she was pregnant with me. And from what I hear, when I was born, they pulled me out, and I came out with my eyes open. And the first thing I did was turn around, and I leaned over, and I kind of stared at my dad. And supposedly the doctor told my dad, you better watch out with this kid because he's got something against you. Don't know if it's true or not, but from the get-go, I was already ready to go. And my mom used to tie me to a tree when I was a kid because she couldn't keep an eye on me. I was just all over the place. I think I was like 5 years old, and she used to sell food outside the house in Mexico. And for some reason, I like to get into things in my underwear. Don't know why, but there was this camper and this truck, and I decided to climb the ladder on the camper, and then the guy that owned the camper decided to take off. So there I go, hanging off the ladder on the camper, and my mom's selling food, and somebody passed by, and I was a little blonde when I was younger, and the thing passed by in front of my mom, and I'm like, Mom, and the customer's like, ain't that your little blondie right there? So my mom gets going, takes the guy off his bike, and she chases the car and everything, picks me up. I get beat, normal, because I wasn't supposed to do it. From there on, I used to get tied to a tree while she was busy because she couldn't keep an eye on me. So I've always done things that I'm not supposed to do. If you say no, I'll do it anyways. If you say you can't do it, that's like telling me I dare you to do it. And that's just my MO, still till today. I'm alcoholic to my bones. I just don't practice the disease as much as I used to with the bottle. And but I still have a lot of alcoholism in me on a daily basis. And bear with me, I'm gonna be going all over the place. When I get up here, I get nervous, and then my mind starts thinking in Spanish, and I don't know what I'm saying. So just bear with me. So anyhow, we moved to East LA, and when I was probably about 9 years old, we started selling tamales after school. My mom used to make a nice dish of tamales, and she used to put us out in the street and start selling, me and my cousin. And to me, that was normal. I used to see my friends from school playing and riding their bikes and stuff, and I was like, I'm out there selling tamales, and that's what I'm supposed to do. She pulled me off to the side. She said, you're the oldest of the men, and you need to learn how to provide. And that being said, you need to pull forward, and you need to be an example, and you need to learn how to provide. So that's all I heard. I need to learn how to provide. So, and every time she let me out, I would get in trouble. So I had to be a provider. And I remember one time we got back from selling, and she said, you got 20 minutes to go out and play, and do not go on the street with your bicycle. Stay on the sidewalk. Do not. If you do, I'm going to whip you. Do not go on the street. Well, it's the first thing I did when I got out there. I started going in and out of the driveways, and I get hit by a car. Well, the car launches me over, and the neighbor was a couple houses down from us. And the only thing I remember, I was like, oh, I'm going to get my butt whooped. And I'm laying on the ground, and there's people around me, and I'm holding my arm, which there was nothing wrong with my arm. My mom comes up, and she's about this high, very feisty, very angry. And she comes up, and nobody touch him. No, and she's like, she was just waiting for me to get up to put a whooping on me. I'm a liar, so I was hurt. Supposedly, ambulance came. They took me to several hospitals to get x-rays, all kinds of stuff. I had nothing wrong. I just didn't want to get my butt whooped. Even the lady the mother of the guy that ended up hitting me, she would come over and bring me some books and kind of stay with us. I didn't want to get sued, I guess, for whatever reason. And everybody thought I was really hurt. But I put on that life for a while because I didn't want to get beat. I mean, my mom did the best she could with what she had. She raised 4 kids on her own. And I think I was the toughest one to raise. And so that being said, she had to kind of break me, if you would say. So there were some good beatings in the house. And I guess back in the 90s, they used to call discipline. Now they call it child abuse. From what I hear, because there was times I went to school and I couldn't sit down. And just to give a little background on my mom, when social worker got a hold of her, and they kept going to the house, and because they sent me to the infirmary, and my legs were like bloodshot. I couldn't sit down. And so does your mom hit you? And no. And I kept, no, she doesn't. I mean, it was pretty obvious. So they get a hold of her, and they told her over the phone, if you touch that kid one more time, we're going to come and take him from you. And my mom told the lady, she's like, well, if you take one, you take all 4. You're not separating them. And just so you know, when he gets home, I'm going to whoop his ass again just because he told. I just want you to know that. And she hung up the phone. And she meant what she said, because when I got home, she put another whooping on me. And she told me straight out, and you better make sure you go and tell tomorrow. So basically telling is not in my nature. Talking about other people's business is not in my nature, because there's beatings around all the way. And my mom was very tough with me, and she was tougher with me than my brothers and sisters. I got 1 brother and 2 sisters, and I don't blame her. I was ready to go from the get-go, like I said. So, fast forward a little bit, I tried a little gang banging, and that didn't go so well. When you go out there and you're trying to be a badass cholo, and your mom's behind you with a cable trying to kick your butt because you're not supposed to be out there. So you kind of lose credit little by little when you go out there and your mom's chasing you all over the damn place. You're playing spin the bottle and you're trying to be a badass, and then mom shows up and you run. It doesn't really work out that tough. So we moved to the high desert area, and she thought that was going to help. That was going to help me. My uncle told her, she's like, you better get this kid out of here. At 13, I had my first drive-by, and they almost shot my brother. So she told my uncle told her, you better get this kid out of here. He's not going to see 18. So he gave her a car and we moved 2 hours away from East LA, 2.5 hours. And just like with alcoholism, you take it wherever you go. I took me wherever I went. I got in trouble wherever I go. I get in trouble today wherever I go. If I act a certain way, if I act on my disease of alcoholism, because even though I haven't taken a drink in 9 years, I suffer from the disease of alcoholism today, right here, right now. Not when I came in 9 years ago. We talk about it, and it says in the book that alcoholism centers in the mind, correct? So if it centers in the mind and I haven't taken a drink, every time I act up, what am I doing? I'm taking a drink from my alcoholism because it centers in my mind, and I take my mind with me all the time. So I don't have to take a drink physically to act alcoholically. Sensitive, irrational, selfish, self-centered. And I can do those things with the best of them. I could be selfish. For me, it's really hard not to be selfish. Because the first thought that comes into my mind, it's me. What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of me? And I work with other people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I read the book with people, this and that. And I kid you not, sometimes I kick and scream when I'm going over there to read with somebody because don't you know that I'm busy and I got stuff to do? Because it's all about me. I'm the worst person I can think of, but I'm the only thing I think about. That's alcoholics just right there. And so I've always been very selfish. Everything I did before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous was for me. And my best thinking got me here. My best decisions got me here. I used to always ask God. When I was 13, I was molested when I was 13 by another man. So that's when my alcoholism and drug addiction took. And I don't talk about it much, but that's when it took off. And nobody in my family realized why I started using drugs and I started drinking a lot at that age. And by the time I was 15, I was taking care of my uncle from AIDS. He died of AIDS. And I was the only one that could take care of him. I was the only one that could bathe him, and I was the only one that could, shave him and stuff. And he was dying. And I saw that man die in our house. And it's one of the worst and most painful deaths that you can. At 16, I saw all that, and it was brutal. And I used to get mad at God and say, why? This is the closest I ever had to a dad. Why are you taking him? And the day before he really passed, we took him to the hospital because he couldn't be at the house no more. And I remember him telling me, do not leave. If you leave, I'm going to die. He told me and my mom. And we left because we'd been up all night. So we left. I took the bus home. And that night he fell into a coma and died. And that was the closest I ever had to a dad. So for me, that was a green light to do whatever I wanted. I wasn't showing up to school. They put in school, they pretty much classified me at 5150, and they didn't want me in there. And they put one of those therapists, because they wanted to talk to me. And they brought my mom in. He's not going to class. He's in school, but he's not going to class. And he's very angry, and he's very detached from everything. So we kind of want to know what's going on. Well, his uncle just died. He took care of him, all this and that. He died in our home, all this and that. So they brought this guy supposedly for me to talk to. And this stranger wanted me to talk about my feelings, which feelings in our house were not accepted. When we cried, my mom would say, I'll give you something to cry about, because what I just did wasn't enough, but there's no crying. And so this person wanted to talk to me, and I was very, very aggressive with the person. I cussed at the therapist. I wanted nothing to do with him. So they finally said there's nothing we can do. They classify me as a ticking bomb. He's going to hurt somebody or hurt himself before he graduates high school. So I graduated high school because I was told by my mom, she said, you got to graduate high school. Graduated high school, went to work in construction. And I've always been a good worker. That's something that my mom instilled in us at a very young age. We didn't know how to deal with our feelings. Feelings were not something that we talked about. There's conversations that I guess parents have these days with their kids that are kind of, I don't know how to say it, but basically in our house, it was you provide, and that's it. If you hurt, you don't say nothing, and if something happens, you don't bring it into the house. That's just it. You provide, and your feelings don't matter as long as your rent gets paid and everything. So throughout the first woman I moved in with, that's the way I took on my responsibility with her. It was I provided, so I did whatever I wanted. To me, because I provided, I thought I was a man, and that gave me a green light to do whatever I wanted. And I started selling drugs and stuff, which doesn't really work out when you're using your own product. So I ended up in debt a couple times, and so I was doing just stuff I wasn't supposed to be doing. You know, in the high desert, the place that was supposed to get me away from all the mess that I was in California, in L.A., every time I got pulled over, the cops would turn over my truck and pull me over and put me on handcuffs and turn over my truck. They always wanted to catch something. You know, they wanted to put me in a case, something, and it never worked out. I was actually lucky that it never worked out. And so, you know, we went into construction. I remember I started working in construction. My first job was at 14 years old. My brother and my mom used to sell food at that place, so the foreman asked my brother if he wanted a job, and he was 14, and he's like, oh, I don't want a job. And my mom said, well, I got this little bastard at home that really needs something to do, and he's getting in a lot of trouble. How about you give him a job? And he said, yeah, bring him over. We'll straighten him out. Okay, so she took me over the next day, and the guy said, yeah, we'll give him a job. So it was for the summer, and it was building trusses, you know, the top parts of the houses. And I was 14 years old at the time. And the guy told my mom, I'm going to put him in the saw where the shade is, because it was hot. It gets in the hundreds up there too. So I'm going to put him in the shade where he doesn't get heat stroke or nothing. And my mom said, no, you see that table out there in the middle of the sun where everybody's jumping off of? That's where I want him to be. I want him to learn that what he's doing, that's where he's going to end up. He needs to go to school, this and that. Well, it backfired because I enjoyed construction. I like construction. So the first week that I worked there, I came home and it was a lot. My body wasn't used to it, you know, and I came home and I told her, I said, you know what, I think I'm going to quit. This is not for me. And I remember she just looked at me and she came up to me and she grabbed me by my shirt. And she said, if you think those are ass beatings they're giving you out there, if you come home tomorrow and you quit that job, you'll know what an ass beating is. I raise no quitters. So I kept that job, and I ended up cleaning yards after that job for the whole summer. So I started pretty much paying for myself since I was 14 years old. So to me, that was a man. You know, to me, driving around in a vehicle with a gun on my lap, that was a man. Taking care of business, that was a man. Had nothing to do with feelings. It had nothing to do with loving the person that was with you, being a partner, because I knew none of that. It was you take care of business, and then you get to play. I enjoyed playing more than taking care of business at the end. And, you know, when I came in here, I used to think that I came in here with a mild, you know, meth deficiency, you would say. And that's what when I went to rehab the first time and they wanted me to accept that I was an alcoholic, I said, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a meth addict. I'm not an alcoholic. You know, I can put the beer down. I can put the alcohol down. But it never really dawned on me that I would put the alcohol down to pick up the pipe, you know, or vice versa. I wouldn't do both at the same time. So it never really dawned on me that was, I have a disease of more. Whatever's going to get me screwed up more, that's what I'm going to take. And so, you know, construction, I got really good at it. And some guy started teaching me how to read plans and stuff, and my ego started growing even more, and I got very, you couldn't tell me nothing. You know, I was the best thing that's happened to concrete since sliced bread. It was me. I thought I was a shit, and I had arrived. And I always used to tell God, I would ask him, I was like, if you give me a truck, a horse, a wife, kids, and money, I would be happy. I wouldn't drink and use drugs. I would always say that. That would be my request to my God. If you give me a truck, a horse, a wife, kids, you know, I'm going to be happy. And when I was 20, I can't lie, damn it. When I was 26, I got the opportunity to have that. I met a beautiful woman. She had 2 kids, and she had horses. So I'm getting there. 2 out of 3. I mean, I'm getting there. And so we started dating and stuff, and I thought that by that time I hadn't picked up meth in 7 years. So by that time, I thought that I was okay. That I had, I drank. I still drank. And I started drinking more and more and more. By that time, I had bought my first house. And I was in the verge of losing my first house too, due to the economy tanking, but also due to my alcoholism that had just started taking off really bad. And I hadn't seen it. But I started drinking heavily, more heavily. I stopped doing meth, but I picked up the alcohol real heavily. And I started drinking a lot. And it got to the point to where where's it at? From Anaheim to San Bernardino is probably like an hour and 20-minute drive. But on traffic, it takes about 3.5 hours to get to that area. So every day after work, I had to pick up my beer in order to make the drive home. So I would stop at an AM PM and pick up 3 tall boys, pick those up, pick up a cup with ice so that it would look like I was drinking a soda, and I would drink that. And I had my next stop was by a certain other AM PM. I would have to stop and pick up another three pack. Between that one and the next stop, I would have to pick up. So I would have to finish them. So I was forcing myself to finish those so I can make my stops, my routine stops. And then I would get off the freeway before I got home and pick up a 12-pack. And then I would get home and the bottle of tequila would come out. But I wasn't an alcoholic because the tequila was only on the weekends or when I was home. I never drank liquor when I was at work. But beer was okay. And there was a time where I wouldn't even drink beer because it would get me tired at work. And didn't know I had crossed that line that the book talks about, that you will cross that line and you will be an alcoholic and you won't even know, something to that effect. I don't know if you guys read the book before, but it says something like that. So at that point, I started drinking at work and from work. And I used to have a little S10, and at this point, I didn't know my alcoholism had taken off, but my S10 didn't have tags. It didn't have insurance. I didn't have a driver's license, and it didn't have a starter. That's a big deal on a car. So I used to, and by the same time, I was driving a vehicle like that, and I was spitting game. I was hot shit. And my car, that truck, I always trip out on it because I drove that vehicle for 3 years like that. But I did not want to spend $80 to put a starter in the vehicle because I wanted to use that money to drink. And I still didn't think I was an alcoholic because I had a job, and I still had a good job. I was still very productive at work. I was losing my house, but it wasn't my fault. It's never my fault. It's always somebody else's fault. And I still didn't see that it was my fault that I was losing my house too. And so I would always park that truck wherever there was a little incline, so that I would always, even in reverse, pop the clutch, let it roll, and start it. And hope to God that it doesn't shut off in the freeway because I would have to get off and push. And then in the mornings, I used to leave my house at 2 in the mornings, 3 in the mornings. So I would push my truck, trying to start it on my driveway. And most of the times I got lucky and it started in my driveway. But when it went on the street, then I would have to push down the street and try to start it. There was times where it wouldn't want to start till I got to a busy street. And there was always a good Samaritan that pulled over and helped me, start it. He said, "What's wrong with the truck?" "I don't know, man. It just did it. It's never happened before. I'm getting late for work." And I drove that vehicle for 3 years like that. And I guess God was looking out for me because I didn't get pulled over. I didn't get a DUI or nothing. And I drank a lot. By that time, I was already a crier, right? I was already a crier. By that time, I was already crying. As soon as I started drinking, I was already crying. I would start crying. I love you, babe, and this and that. And she knew I had drank. That's how she always caught me. When we used to, there was one time, me and my girlfriend at the time, we decided to go out to a party, and we both got very drunk. And mind you, she has a family, she has a business, she's already a mature woman, and I'm still stuck in my teen years. And so I drove really drunk back home, and the next day I get a phone call from her, and she says, "You know what, I can't do this anymore. I cannot drink and drive the way we did. I have kids. I have a responsibility to my kids. I totally understand, we'll take turns. You know, one time you'll drink, the next time I'll drink, but there's always going to be a designated driver. It just so happens that when it was always her turn, that it was her turn to drink and have fun, we would get in the truck and we'd start driving and I start crying. And she would look at me and she's like, Mother effer, you've been drinking. No, I haven't, but I love you. And I became a crier. As soon as I started drinking, I became a crier. And she knew that I was drinking by that time. So, where was I? So anyhow, I had made this deal with God. If he gave me everything I wanted, I was going to be okay. And I wouldn't use drugs and alcohol. By that time, I wasn't using any meth anymore or drugs. It was just drinking. And I was drinking a lot. I lost my house. And I continued to put my life in danger with alcohol. But I was still covering it up. I ended up moving with this woman. And somehow I still covered it up that I was okay. And probably about a month and a half ago, we were talking. We were coming from Phoenix. She's my wife now, and we're coming from Phoenix. And I told her, I was like, you know what? When I was drinking, I wasn't that bad. I mean, I still got up in the mornings and went to work and stuff. As soon as I picked up drugs, that's when I screwed up. But while I was drinking, it wasn't that bad. And she just turned around and looked at me, and she's like, it wasn't that bad to that point, but I couldn't depend on you. She's like, you would come home drunk or you would get too drunk. I wondered if you were going to go to work, if you were going to get up early enough to feed the horses. I had the kids to take to school. She's like, so in a way, I was robbing her peace of mind, and she couldn't depend on me, even though I was getting up and going to work. And that was my big thing that I used to hold on to that little part. I was still functional when I was drinking a lot. But then when she told me that, it made a lot of sense. Like, dude, I robbed that woman from that peace of mind of her being able to sleep and rest because I came home drunk, but she wasn't resting because she wasn't wondering if I was going to make it over to feed the animals or follow my daily activities that I was supposed to do. And I used to pride myself on that I was pretty good still drunk till she kind of told me the truth, Al-Anon, it helps. And so we got together, and I think my disease kind of tapered off a little bit, but then it started picking up more. And then when 3 years of the relationship, I started getting that little itch again. I started getting that little itch that maybe I deserve something. I haven't done anything for 7 years. I've been with this woman for 3, and I'm kind of living her life. So I started feeling less than. I started thinking about sabotage. I don't deserve this life. So there must be something. And it only takes one person to come by you when you're in that fragile moment and say, hey, man, whatever you need, got you. That's all it took for me because I was at that spot. And that could still happen today after 9 years of sobriety if I don't maintain my connection with my higher power, if I don't maintain that connection with my sponsor. My sponsor explained to me when I first met him, he's like, sponsorship in the program is a triangle. He's like, it's you, me, and God. And it's got to be connected at all times. He's like, and if you detach from one of them, the triangle falls. He's like, so you got to have that connection all the time. You, me, and God. When you can't get a hold of me, you're going to always be able to get a hold of God. He's like, but when you need direction, then I'm always going to be here. But you can't get a hold of me, you got to get that connection with God. And I didn't have a connection with God, but the one God that had let me down, the one God that had let me get molested, I never had a childhood. Because by the time I met this woman, I met her kids had a childhood, and I didn't know that that's what they're supposed to have. We were resting one time after work, and I remember my stepdaughter they were running around, and they were doing a video and all this stuff, and she's laying next to me on the couch, and I kind of look over, and I'm like, oh my God, she's going to wake up, it's going to be angry, because that's what happened in my house. In my house, if my mom woke up, it was ass beatings all around, and I was like, she's got to rest, this and that, and my hands were sweaty, and I was nervous, and she wakes up, and she's like, what's wrong? They're making noise. Should I tell them to stop, this and that? And she looked at me, she's like, babe, those are kids. They're supposed to have fun. That's what kids are supposed to do. That was the first time I understood that kids are supposed to have fun. They're supposed to be a childhood. So leave it up to an alcoholic to turn that around. Well, I didn't have one of those. And now that got in my head. I didn't have a childhood. maybe I don't deserve this life, this and that. So I went and picked up again. That guy that said everything you need, I'm here, this and that. And I went and picked up. I picked up and I took off for 6 days, I believe. And on the third day, I called my I was on my way to buy the engagement ring, now that I remember. And between the engagement ring and an 8-ball, I got lost. And I took off. The first time I took off, I was one night. I think it was one night, and I started drinking heavily. Ended up in a motel, and she ended up finding me. I told her, it was alcohol, this and that, when they picked me up. And then when I got home, the guilt just ate me up, and I said, you know what, I did meth. And we got into this big old fight, and she said, I'm not having this in my house. I got kids, and somehow I convinced her that it was just that one time that was going to happen, just like we alcoholics do. We're very good at convincing people that this is the last time, I promise. And I remember saying that I promise this will never happen again. And I think within a month and a half, it happened again. And the next time that it happened, I took off, and I was gone for 6 days. And after the third day, I called her, because I knew she wasn't going to take me back. So I called her, and I told her that I had gotten kidnapped at knife point, and that's why I hadn't been home. I said, I'm pretty sure she's going to understand that her baby was in danger. She's going to take me back and say, oh, you poor thing, they made you use drugs. In my head, the delusion in my head was really she was going to buy it. And so I call her, and she says, who's this? I says, it's me, G. And she said, where you been? We've been looking for you. Babe, I got kidnapped at knife point. They've driving me all over this area right here in L.A. I don't know where I'm at. I need you to come pick me up. I remember her saying, really? Really? At knife point? Really? And I knew by then she didn't believe me. So I hung up the phone, and I continued to go on my deal. And I ended up on a high horse for the next couple of days. I didn't know where I was. I was walking. The bottom of my feet were full of blisters. And I was terrified. That was one of my biggest fears, ending up on a high horse. And I remember a friend of mine that I went to when I started in construction. He ended up on a high horse, and I would run into him in the high desert, and he would be wearing his shoes on his shoulder, and he'd be walking barefoot at 110-degree pavement. And I would tell him, dude, put your shoes on. Oh no, dude, I'll waste them. No, you don't want to do that. And he would continue walking. So when I see him, I would get scared, but it wouldn't stop me from doing what I was doing. So basically, so I did that, took off, and I remember the one night, and this is, I think, what they call a moment of clarity. That the one night, the last night, like all of us have those last nights, the night you run out of dope, you got no alcohol. So now everything, you're like, man, if I had more dope, I probably wouldn't have happened, but I was out. And I remember sitting in the corner of the hotel room bed, and I remember crying. And I remember I said out loud, I said, God, please take this. I said, I don't want it anymore. I don't want the pain. I don't want the loneliness. I just take it. I'll do anything. If you take this, I will do anything. The next morning I woke up, and I was hallucinating already, but I didn't have a desire to drink, and I didn't have a desire to use drugs anymore. And I had somehow, for some reason, I thought my wife was going to go pick me up, this and that. It didn't happen. But when she finally went and picked me up, and she saw me in the back of the truck with my brother, she looked through the mirror and she said, I cannot take this man home. This is not the man I fell in love with. I got my kids at home. I can't take them home. My brother took me to his house, and he helped me detox, like he always did. I ended up in rehab. Like I said, they wanted to tell me that I was an alcoholic. I didn't want to accept it because I wasn't. Got out of rehab, went to my first meeting, and here's where I started understanding what the program Alcoholics Anonymous is. This is where I started understanding the love that Alcoholics Anonymous shows a fellow alcoholic that just came in. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what race you are, if you speak English or not. And I walked into this meeting, and I couldn't read it, and it was a big speaker meeting, and I sat there, and the book started coming around, and I sat there, and when it came to me, we were supposed to read a page, and I didn't know how to freaking read. 30 years old, I didn't know how to read. I can run a company with the best of them. I can finish concrete. I can do a lot of things. I just can't pronunciate. And so I sat there and I got the words and I started, and I couldn't get them out. And this dude next to me, this heavy-set dude next to me, pushed his chair over to me. And he leaned over to me and he started whispering every word in that page. Every word. And I'd never been to this meeting. This is the first time I showed up to this meeting. And his name was Hollow Point, rest in peace. He died of alcoholism. I don't know why he died and I stayed. You know, it's been said, my sponsor told me Alcoholics Anonymous is not for the people that need it. He said it's not. It's for the people that do the work. It's not for the people that need it or want it. It's for people that do the work. Because if it was for people that need it, man, these rooms would be filled with a lot of sober alcoholics. But only the ones that do the work stay here. So this guy stuck with me, and he kept reading with me. Every week I would show up on Tuesday. That became my home group. I show up on Tuesday, and he would look over to me, and he had the chairs already there, and we would sit down, and he would help me read. When I asked a man to sponsor me, he's the one that taught me how to read out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. He sat with me in the dictionary, and it took me a while to get through my steps. But every time I would get to a word and I didn't understand it, he would say, "You don't know what that means?" I said, "No, I don't. Let's look it up in the dictionary." So we would look it up, and he said, "Use it in a sentence." And he would give me an example. And he broke down to me that book on a regular basis. And he's still my sponsor. He's in California, and he's still my sponsor till today. And that man, one of the best things that he ever did for me from the beginning, as soon as I would call him, every morning I would call him, and he would answer. He's like, "Hello, Gustavo." He's like, "Have you conceded to your most inner self that you're an alcoholic?" And I would try to answer. I would be like, "Yeah, no. I'm not asking you. Have you conceded to your most inner self that you're an alcoholic?" And I didn't understand that till I got to that part in the book, that I have to concede to my most inner self that I am an alcoholic. And without this program, there's a good chance I'm going to die. And if I'm not going to die of alcoholism, I'm going to live long and a sorry-ass life. And I'm going to wish I was dead. And it didn't make sense to me that he would tell me that, because I still didn't comprehend a lot of the parts in the book. And I'm grateful that when I got here, I didn't know how to read, because I'm the type of person that I learned a little bit, and you can't tell me anything anymore. I'm the type of person that, I learned how to do one little thing, and I think I'm a master at it already. That grandiose mentality is still there, and I have to work at it hard. So he took me through the book, and I spent 3 years of my recovery here. My first 3 years, I was angry. I did not want to be here. I didn't want to be an alcoholic like you guys. I didn't. But I didn't understand what alcoholism was. Alcoholism, to me, it was you drank too much out of a brown bottle, and you can't function. That's alcoholism. But I didn't know that how much I drank didn't make me an alcoholic. It's what happened inside of me after I took that drink. That's what made me an alcoholic. Because as soon as I take that drink, I can breathe. I don't know if it happens to you guys, but I can breathe. I'm all tense all the time, and as soon as I take that drink, I can breathe. Okay, now we can talk about whatever we got going. And I spent my whole teen years till I was 30 doing that. If we had to talk about something, I had to take a drink. If we have to discuss something, I got to solve a problem, take a drink. Drive from California to Arizona, drink the whole way. Play pool, drink. Everything revolved around drinking. Riding horses was drinking. And when I got sober, I had to learn how to do all of that without drinking. And I remember me and my wife were riding one time, and it was 3 years that she put up with my anger, because I was very angry. And I remember she kind of looked at me, and she kind of told me, she said, "Why don't you just take a drink?" She's like, "Just take a drink. You're much nicer when you drink." And she didn't know what she was asking me, but she also didn't know the effect that her telling me that brought into me. Because right there and then, I realized that for me, alcohol was never the problem. For me, alcohol was always the solution. And when that bottle was taken away from me, I got irritable, discontent, and unhappy, and I didn't know how to deal life sober. And I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't come here not to drink. I learned how to live sober. That's what I'm learning here. Because I can't cope with life without alcohol. So this is what Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me. is to live a life sober and how to handle life sober. Because left to my own devices, I run back to the bottle as soon as I can. And I'll cower it up and I'll say I can't handle it. I'm going to take a drink and it'll be all better. But I know that it won't be all better. So 3 years in, I got invited to go to a house to do a panel. And I asked my sponsor, hey, should I go? He said, yeah, dude, maybe you'll finish your steps. So I went. 2 guys asked me just out of prison. They asked me to sponsor them. And I kept asking my sponsor for those 3 years, dude, why am I here? I said, I don't get it. Why am I here? I said, I wear cowboy boots. I wear a hat. You know, I'm in Newport Beach. There's surfers. There's all these white folks. I said, I'm the only one with a fucking hat. What am I here? Why? Who am I going to relate to? And that was, what am I doing here? And he just said, dude, just keep doing what you're doing. And mind you, I had commitments at every meeting I went. I was going to 2 meetings a day. I used to pick up guys. My truck was never empty. I was doing everything that was required of me to stay sober, but the anger was not going away. The anger was not going away. And that's what was eating me up all the time, the anger, because I couldn't take a drink. You know, they say you shouldn't take a drink, but I couldn't take a drink. And so I went, those guys asked me to sponsor them, those 2 guys from prison, and the first time I went to read with them, we opened the book, we started reading, and we got to the forwards. I think it was forward to the 4th edition, where it says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. To help other alcoholics is the main purpose of this book. So, and I highlighted that with them. And as soon as we read that, I read it and I saw purpose. And I just asked my sponsor, what was my purpose? And I realized, that's my purpose. To help other alcoholics recover from alcoholism. To share with him my story. To share with him how am I recovering. Not how my sponsor is doing it. How am I doing it? That's my purpose. And I looked at the guys and I was like, dude, you guys, can you see that? Is, yeah, we highlighted Holmes. You told us to do it, Holmes, and this and that. So they kicked me out. Somebody brought heroin. They were going to cavity search. I wanted no part of that, so I left. I get in the truck and I call my sponsor and I'm crying. And I'm telling him, dude, I just read this right here, man. And it says the purpose, and I found the purpose, this and that. And he just laughed. He laughed and he said, he's like, just keep doing what you're doing, buddy. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And I went home that day, my wife, it was Wednesday, and on Wednesdays, it was family night. We had dinner. And that day, for some reason, I kept trying to read with those guys throughout the day. And for some reason, every time I went, they weren't there. And I got pissed by the 3rd time I was there. And I said, F those guys, I'm not going back. Don't know I have a life. You don't know who I am. Da-da-da-da. And for some reason that day, my wife's like, dude, why don't you go and read with the guys? When you get home, dinner will be ready. Okay, whatever. So I went. I get home, and I put the book down in the coffee table, and we're about to eat dinner. And I open it up, and I said, babe, look, right here, look. And she looks at me, she's like, yeah. I was like, all alcoholics, precisely how to recover, that's my purpose. I said, look, right here. And she looked at me, and she's like, dinner's getting cold. And I said, no, you don't understand. And I'm crying. And finally she looks at me, she's like, this means a lot to you. And I said, it does mean a lot to me. For the longest time, I'm trying to figure out what's my place in this world, what's my purpose. And deep down to the bottom of my heart, I feel that is my purpose, to help other alcoholics recover. That's my purpose. And I feel it. And when I was out there drinking and using, I remember my mom used to ask me all the time, mijo, quit drinking. Mijo, I've been praying to the Lord to take you. I'm tired of watching you kill yourself. I'm praying to her to take you. And I would tell her, just give me a minute, Mom. I will go in the bathroom, snort something, drink something, come back and talk to her. And I would tell her, for some reason, and I used to think I used to be a philosopher or something. I'm going through what I'm going through for a purpose, and God's got this plan and this and that, and all this and that. Little did I know that coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, your past is your best asset. Little did I know that everything that I went through had a purpose. I thought it was just high talk that I was doing, and it turned out to be a purpose. My story today can help somebody that's going through the same thing I'm going through. I've had the opportunity to sit with guys that they can't read. And I've sat with them next to a meeting, and we're reading, and I'm whispering every word, and I'm crying at the same time in the meeting because I'm getting to pay back what was given to me when I got here. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a life that, I already had it before I came here, but it's shown me how to appreciate a life. It's showing me how to how to appreciate my wife, how to appreciate the kids. There he goes. Woo. How much time do I got? What's the couple minutes? Okay. So yeah, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a life that I could understand now. For the longest time, I didn't understand myself, and I was lost. But through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, through the guidance of a sponsor, and me leaning on a higher power, I've been able to understand who I am and what is my purpose in Alcoholics Anonymous today. And I've been able to show my mom that I could be a son, whether I agree with her on a lot of stuff that she does or anything. She did the best she could with what she had, and I'm okay with that today. And I just hope that the remaining time that I have here in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I continue and hope to become a better member of Alcoholics Anonymous in good standing. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you very much.
Let's thank Gustavo one more time.